have 3 judges and 2 teams.
Oh, we're not judging.
What are you doing here?
I would love to be judging.
Yeah, I'll make sure it starts on time. We got 6:05, right?
The announcement was
Yes.
6:15. The pairing says 6:05. I don't know which one it's.
Oh, okay.
We're
That was
doing
great.
6:05.
Sure. Yeah, I'll make sure it starts.
It's
If I can identify who the 3 judges are.
Ian
I got it.
Miller,
I got it.
It's Ian Miller, Miles, and Stovica.
Yeah.
That's pretty easy. Okay.
Yeah. Alright. Thanks.
Somebody?
Yeah, it's definitely starting up 6:15.
if they're for educational purposes.
Wait, even if it's for like private consumption, you have to delete it.
No, you can.
My videos can stay up because I get permission, but it's just like they say no to recording.
Oh, okay, so it's all, that's, okay. Oh, actually, sorry, wait 1 second, I have to email Gary.
Maybe we say that the round started.
You don't wanna get that fun. Okay.
Alrighty. Yep. Everybody good?
Advantage for stability, Middle East extremism, threats, global order, causes fear, conflicts, competition, K1, Americans become two. Just give the downplay, teacher, Alexander, next jerk, process, membership, record, hero, beginning to be in such a bad together, as opposed to continue that continues to hold orders there. Capture short states, down to your Putin tried to restore the good to cold war, they want changes, everything to the force again territory, destruction, peace and order, will be found every shape, access, raw materials, finished products, as a free fold, and the passage of revolution, wars of all records, the conflicts of the Balkan misses, and Iraq is more different challenge based on records, concept, research, blooded ice, which will increase the tanks of US and Europe, the wars of contact, of all the super security, and the world order, those aspects of the great power, king, 15 great powers, and war was all from it, and the law, and the arguments over proper states, spheres of influence intersect the question of the U.S. and its allies. Should hear response. We should collaborate to achieve we hear the short records clear. Don't try to hold the great great battle against the president powers never specify strategy arguments across the carrying out the spheres. Powers inevitably create fast such a behavior for lands of the great powers of seven. They even had enough. We know these members of major powers. ISIS will kill Bangladesh political stability. Economy 15 Bangladesh is gone for the Middle East. The fight to try to look at ISIS and Bangladesh's political environment is totally it's not going to get it. But we're about to really prophecy and take over the force and be radicalized, make them more likely to involve themselves in security caused by drug dreams are all happy to exploit Beijing's political environment that destroys effective implementation of India's Act East 4 policy initiative. Corroborate 15 Israeli situation Bangladesh can come forward. It could be a time where everybody just got started. The new Act East policy is discouraged putting down the sequences of reparation to the anti-Israel terrorist war. Bangladesh could ruin all of that. That's his overflow. Could destabilizing to set up a chain reaction. That's key to solve Indo-China border conflict. Charlie 15 Beijing supports attacking India on the border to its Belt and Road Initiative. G proposed that common Israel could be found in India's Act East policy of Beijing's instances of friction with India. While it will take a while to resolve the boundary issues, they should hold on to new Act East policy deep attacks China's work. This will be the first step towards getting Beijing to be watchful zone activities. Nuclear war. Ahmed 14. China is words combination to already great power nationalism. Nationalism states can prevail. Nationalism is well making difficult with isolation. Though people should states to leverage nuclear weapons national strategy coupled with the military. India recapture to bed market make force other use of nuclear weapons. The status quo is causing incremental escalation, which will result in large footprint that only few license burner 16. The question is loaded constant was already gone. President Smith, the U.S. escalated tensions. Japan also said that it's perfect plane American divisions like these power terrorism physically demand for war military action. War American defense war against the war. ISIS will try to shake American support terrorism. ISIS managed to carry out the war. Americans will escape crimes affiliate countries according to the IGC. Tremendously helps the narrative that argues that the extra village would be the worst shot because ISIS wants to itself as the Islamic world's offender. The impulses will only help the Islamic State. The current strategy is resulting in hollow victories because they alienate Sunni population from the Iraqi government, resulting in too much collateral damage. Jarno 212. One forces victim of the assaulting our money. Say our family simply come try to symbol as military goals are being that Sunni fingers to voicing the resentment of the groups as echo that the Islamic State to prosper. Instead of fears to trip with the world like they be fertile grounds for IS and political worried about the military needs of them. Political war president become a productive nation to come from the moon. The Iraqi government has spent little on the programs that can rebuild and bar the plan solves first. Its status quo fails because the U.S. has large defensive footprint and the backline special forces come with big logistical footprint, which makes them ineffective in syncing up with Iraqi forces. Reducing the support tail is key to shift special operations forces to a new combat operation, which leads to effective offensive operations against ISIS. Houston 15. Winning out the theater examination, re-examining U.S. forces operate close and embedded device with the Iraqi forces. Ignore the support requirements. There's another approach we call with the special operations forces, but we're only small teams embedded with their requirements back up with the air. There's no training program that years became fight like the wars against Iraq. Activities and become guns with small theater bus defense protected protection border bases. The conventional basing construction life footprint ethos in the right today the hybrid regular wars and features social operating costs special research structure for robust border protection will increase dramatically back requirements every 500 years prior. This was to protect composition specific task and such bases mobility network vacation should be the primary attacking mobile strike teams to disrupt the vulnerable lives and communication taken the fights with the enemy for the teams and initiative to show the war where every country experience the need for it does start hoping above us to do anything involving U.S. troops in combat in modern warfare being static means being vulnerable and conventional and light is a better even terrorist risk attempted by terrorists versus the heavy support increased operation versus that force me channel logistic lines combat support needs to take on security capacity first like the whole combat services support can change the calculus away from rotation fighting small teams and upon effectively deal with the vendor, or we reduce the logistics and support you as small as beautiful, absolutely necessary. This applies beyond IS, we must either adapt or be prepared for the fights in the future. Effective offensive operations without a large footprint is key to reverse the appeal of IS ideology, breaks up fourth terrorist branches. This is French 323. The above strategy enabled access sleeping because all the factories benefit influence and positive tax status in terms of terrorist game representation and for the raid the caliphate, including out like commitment to support the America's arms hand. ISIS is a spectacular defeat. The most aggressive strategy for the control of ISIS about the amount of territory aggression to stop the spread and loosen ISIS hold on the hearts and minds. Jihad will never leave the key weekend and change humility ISIS and you defeat the theology, you break its core. Second, a life footbird speeds up our operations with swings momentum key to defeat ISIS goal 15 to 200 can 200 commandos change the time of war. Those soldiers could make all the difference. Backup supports the direct and least forces that need to partner with the right need to steer and encourage fighters, but it needs to happen more. We need to and that's our favorite convention makes sense. It's really the props that we get forces like tactic for creativity. ISIS don't have to be instrumental, but they don't like how to get onto them. Commandos conducting raising egg and destroying logistics. ISIS will get up more now. We do and dominating keep to break the forces into a mobile battle. Then this backups should dig in. Should run local factors and make them more likely than to be on the offensive. ISIS and measure the psychological warfare. Despite heavy losses, many fearless of militants are still on the offensive. Makes his plan what the assurance on the defensive. What ISIS is very good at. All the dudes like ADs know when it's flanking 20 IS under stress. In 72 hours, the entire narrative ISIS is on the battlefield will be crushed into wars on two fronts, battlefields of minds and people fighting. The US can kill IS fighters all day long, but unless it destroys IS as a popular ideology, won't achieve victory. Third, the plan solves Sunni alienation. Frontline special operation forces work in tandem with Iraqi forces, which builds up legitimacy of the Iraqi government. Strong appears what is in all 15. The Achilles heel and identity conflicts have been perfectly failed to establish the conflict table, populist application of swift problem to bomb the government into and price most of the effective means. The and no desire for the government is I answer desire for the PDP being found with the SS and Afghanistan work to sharply reduce empowered by the local force and Georgia support for their people. IW the model helps to eliminate white historically coalition factors but not by conflict with these and church knowledge being hampered by the labor friction processes and opposition for opposing forces limited population pays dictated decision need to establish some sense of effective government structure local levels of bottom up should be more effective the creating conditions for central government authority that stop and encourage the president and those that address forces of those that take the lead are isolated like our participation issues become a large number of war fighters are more likely to be adapted to response to the population creates a resentment and desire to expel fortress single as well operators will live at the bottom line of the influence of the situation possible to work on situational awareness having the flexibility for essential percent to be essential for opportunity goodwill and that's their commitment to see through the bottom of should be more than used to be a formulation of local governance which will promote legitimacy civil government advantage to is the SOF operators are fighting with a large footprint around which undermines partner capacity through free routing dex war fighting natural 15 spec up the pressure capacities and developing not to scale with confidence small footprint approaches large number of survivors will disincentivize host states and prohibited forces from fighting effective leader under country typical locations and present CPM needed to support perform that can use the vouchers company that operations but when the number of the vouchers becomes a largely created kind of relationship the performance may not be sustainable conducting and advisory operations the industrial scale with the US military doesn't know small footprint especially for logistical support of the larger advisory after the war that we put the host nation in the vaccine the plan shifts SOF forces to a light footprint strategy that solves overstretching and improves on conventional war fighting that prevents Russian proxy expansion that's routine at the height of Iraq and Afghanistan special operation force too busy had the little time to think about that future security vibrant so no master what we call conventional counter unconventional warfare the Russian elements have organized British forces separate as EW funding and effective support countering this kind will depend on specs options nothing better to thwart enemy special operations the US military must find ways to generate psychological budgets to turn the population's loyalty as well as facing major hurdles coming out of Iraq the intensive operational paces cause the actual training education taking major human spec ops which are even more worn on than he's reset unconventional warfare is key to respond to Russian adventurism otherwise they attack the Baltics CAS 15 NATO may become unable to respond to actions of different by Putin to protect Russian spectators in the Baltic 60 break and sharper state boxing NATO keep that from escalating by sooner re-emerging climate NATO making Baltic increasingly national program here forces which states will have to respond by actively resisting Russia weak NATO keeps America and Russia into world and tension goes nuclear firmer 15 tension with Russia could blow into all our conflict pushing against each other that Putin trying to seize NATO to protect the million would be too afraid of escalating violence to respond Russia had to show the last years that it could generate good as the large conventional forces are short notice that it's not exercises can be used to not only the intimidation force but also potentially seize NATO territory to Russia together with the risk brings it to miscalculation represents an existential threat a large footprint SOF is the only way to stop China is even makes it impossible to stop China war only the plan can stop Chinese adventures with Panic 14 China's military compensation will secure that takes intervention air forces China silence to seek to aggressively establish sovereignty the US and partner as well from critical roles to play the global media business and competition that perpetuates will be so destroy and this way China from action that will period tensions US and SOF policies will serve security assessment to include partner capacity preparing for conventional warfare US and will needed in military expertise for the security competition Asia Pacific region the guided implementation of the dissuasive forces will go forward in maintaining the scope ensuring the conflict with China remains unlikely nuclear war ISIN 14 China can face and steps escalate very quickly beating police on US is likely to come good deterrence could in fact be weakened China saves only the American involvement possibly face close oppression nuclear escalation like to be unlikely no company will China may worship nuclear threat China may its nukes early conventional attacks reduce waging confidence and ability to retain nuclear deterrence the plan is necessary to cement a shift in strategy because experimentation on the ground is the only way to operationalize new tactics abroad share free 15 agile people and equipping are not enough they must be supported by warfighting concepts that are adapted just as the army had to reorient to coin the same process will need ground forces should experiment to exploit warfighting solutions that the generals conventional thinking and doctrines printed to have investment trading doctrine and policies but this is not enough to see the US needs ground forces that are inherently more agile and adaptable to learn that the hard way direct Afghanistan regarding innovative solutions that challenge is not to say that the process of adaptation encouraging those who challenge the assumption is capable of strategic agility the ground forces need warfighters who are willing to take risks and to do something different. The U.S. military will have to evolve faster, delays causing missions to send all the specific tactics or equipment used in Iraq and Afghanistan will plan future wars, for the process of responding to new challenges and adapting will undoubtedly be needed. The United States should significantly reduce the logistical and support tail of special operations forces in Iraq consistent to a level with village stability operations. Small footprint team, Total 16, a small SOF team brought down the top of government Afghanistan, destroying success UW operations of intentional viability. This war warfare will fall to constellation campaigns directed at Afghanistan. Their threats of response will take place at the crazy and SOF or hurting forces choice after taking Russian campaign US capacity to conduct more crazy operations. Actually, the US must recognize where adversaries prefer to operate like conventional options are not suitable. Mark is suitable.
We're gonna take some prep. So, can I ask some questions, Donnie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you said reduce the support tail of special operations forces. There are part that uses that in, like, a term of art.
Newsom.
Newsom?
Yes.
Yeah,
Can
that's
you just
yeah.
read me the line where it uses that as term of art?
Yeah. Support requirements. The logistics and support tail required to support embedded advisement in Iraq would
Okay.
include medical evacuation. Okay.
Yeah, so can you just tell me what presence you reduce?
Medical evacuation, personnel recovery, combat search and rescue, quick reaction forces and compounding logistics.
Yeah, so
You know,
basically
sorry,
the
go
conceptual
a
way
little bit slower.
conceptual way to package this is that all of the backlines that the SOF currently go to sleep at night, we'd get rid of that so they'd have to embed themselves with Iraqi forces.
Okay, sure.
So
Do
like
you-
those
do you
are all the
remove a-
specifics. This is the general theory
Do
of
you
the
remove a military base from Iraq? There's none, so like.
We,
Well, logistical
no,
support
we
tails
do
are
think that
basic
there are
structure.
military bases in Iraq that special
Which ones are owned by the
operations
United
forces-
States?
Sorry, what?
Oh, he already said
the
no.
logistical
I'm
support
good with
tail
that.
that the SOF uses.
Yeah, so consistent with village stability operations.
Yes.
What is that as a term of art?
Afghanistan 2002 village stability operations were activities where our SOF were embedded with local forces. So yeah, Wet S15.
Okay. Alright, I'll stop using prep time. It's 8:54. Yeah. Actually, sorry, we need to. It should be. It might just be this time.
Oh, you are.
It may not be in it. It's pulled out.
Gotcha. Okay. I got it. Okay, that's why. That must have sucked. No, I came from Charlotte because that's where.
Yeah,
that's
I think
where
that's
right.
cool.
8:25.
8:25. Alright, now let's start some cross-sex time. Alright, so
Sure.
we're gonna continue on the what presence you remove and why is that necessary to get the SOF to go in and
I already said all this. We
Iraq.
get rid of the logistical support tail, then they have to embed
Yeah,
themselves with the Iraqi
which card
forces.
do you say you have that says the only way that they will integrate with the Iraqi forward presence is
Newsom
to
with
use
his goal.
forward presence? What?
Newsom, White S Gulf.
So the
Okay.
Newsom
Yeah, I
card
mean, like,
said the
but
Newsom
you-
card
you
says that when
know,
special operating forces get used
You
to
can
having a
read.
Death Star of logistics behind them to support them,
Well,
they're
that's
unlikely
fine.
to do the type of operations the AF says is needed to solve ISIS.
I mean, like Fiat, we just do the operations. What's your answer?
they are
that
too
you keep-
used to the compounding logistics and support tail to do it.
Also, for every
Yeah.
one forward operated person, there are 3 people that have to be left to guard the base, obviously. So ISIS can
Like,
easily
what-
attack
which,
base.
Which base?
Like
What
our
do you mean?
logistical support tail. The stuff
Yeah, that's
here.
not a base. That's a facility. What base?
We will argue we have 2
It's
new
a semantic
bases in the
distinction.
Hamar
But
region
which-
of Iraq and 2 bases in the
It's
Anbar
U.S.
region
owned.
of
You have,
Iraq.
you have 2 bases in which region?
We have 4 bases in Iraq,
Which
2 in the
card says this?
Hamar region and 2 in Anbar.
Which car says this?
This is not a 1EC card.
Okay, but then like that's your solvency deficit to the counterpart.
No, the solvency deficit is that our military presence in Iraq
But you don't.
is too
do you get rid of
heavy
those
now.
bases?
Yes, that's what the logistical support tail is. Our argument is that if you have that infrastructure there, you have to have people guarding that infrastructure. That leads to like a kind of snowballing effect where we have to have people in the back lines guarding ISIS unconventional attacks. So basically, our whole argument is that we need
Yeah.
counter unconventional warfare,
Yeah.
which means we need to be asymmetric to meet ISIS's asymmetry.
Alright, so let's
What
talk
you're
about-
advocating is a symmetrical strategy.
The second advantage, so the like Special Operations Forces key to China card
Yes.
is not about Iraqi Special Operations Forces.
I agree.
It's just like
Our argument
so,
is that we set a model for how the SOF would operate in other places because once
Which
we've
card says that
operationalized
the
counter
plan-
UW in Iraq, they would adopt that. They would adopt the best practices and do it elsewhere too.
The modeling card is Shar. It was the second to last one in the 1EC.
it says countering this will depend on spec ops. There's nothing better to thwart an enemy special operator. The U.S.
You're
military
reading the wrong
must
card.
find ways to generate psychological effect that are
You're
shifting
reading
the
the wrong
population's
card.
loyalty.
I'm already telling you're reading the wrong piece of evidence. He just told you the card you have to read, which
Yeah,
is the
reading
second
the
last
wrong
one in
card.
1EC.
Ground forces should experiment to explore new warfighting
Yes,
solutions
should.
that
Like, why would
challenges
they- why
conventional
would they
thinking
do
and
that?
The
doctrine.
AFIS ground forces experimenting, they
Yeah.
would adopt the best practices. Once VSOs work in Afghanistan, they would start using unconventional warfare
Why?
strategies
Which
elsewhere.
card says that they would
Because-
use those strategies?
Because they just defeated the largest national security threat to the U.S. using an unconventional
I mean, this
strategy against an
presumes that
unconventional
you've won
foe.
the first vintage, so like the first one is key to the second one.
Like, obviously, if you win, then we lose to ISIS, you're probably going to win the debate. Our argument is that then the Special Operations Forces can use an unconventional warfare strategy.
Well, so,
in one
so
place,
you're just
they would
willing
use
to concede that if we
unconventional warfare in
lose to
another place.
ISIS after the plan, you can't solve your second advantage?
No.
Our argument is
What
that
do
they
you
would
mean? That was
experiment.
what you said.
The argument is that the Special Operating Forces in Iraq, when they do the combat operations of the plan, they will serve as a vanguard for organizational innovation across the board.
Yeah, but
which
if
means
that
they'll start
innovation
doing
fails,
those
why would they
operations
implement
across
it
the world,
elsewhere?
even if like we end up losing.
If that innovation
Well,
fails,
most
why would
important
they
things,
implement it
will not
elsewhere?
fail. It was successful in Afghanistan. It'll be successful here.
Why
Like,
was it
we-
successful in Afghanistan? Like, what did it do?
Well, we stopped doing it in 2006, which is kind of our whole thing.
25. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that worked. Yeah. Yeah. You should.
Six off, advantage one, advantage two.
Okay.
Negative 10 or more.
Yeah.
What were you left with? What was? Sorry.
633.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry.
Alright. Somebody good?
Yep.
First overseas bases, military presence in bases, Gene Kong 11, the two military presence, first establishment military bases, and indirect involvement in domestic military complex of one sovereign state by another sovereign state, significant reduction, muscles in base CBO 90, significant reduction in military force with regard to unity, most military bases, any broader definition based on possible to determine what presence is, and opens up the whole madness of voter because it destroys predictable limits, and I saw the T region precludes interregional transfer without specifying the blank Kentucky or appeals 84, by reduce it from person is transferred away from one category to another classification or change, but not reduce interregional affirmatives or infinite enlightenment, and only to any topic, dissatisfied topic by direction allowing the active land court, like repurpose and shift disadvantages, disadvantages, basis, purpose, grant, UAC conditionality, otherwise, settlements, and combination. Now, the political settlement plan, the United States maintain its current military presence and arrival implementing stakeholder-centric counter-insurgency strategy translate military success into a political settlement involving protection negotiations with the Islamic State, keeping the current military presence in force. Threats while revising coin is key to insurgency. You can balance it. 11. 3. Focus on distributing other relevant stakeholders that impact future political agreement. This will ensure the legitimacy of the political agreement while it does not regard full scale to coin operations which are rejected to facilitate political process of the deep legitimate parties in the covenant signed by the covenant and the condition for legal process to negotiate a solution is the best one can hope for the military forces and instrumental and influence the decision making causes the different stakeholders can complement into negotiation and eventually complement military force becomes instrumental and changing the balance of the power on the battlefield in a new section that is desirable to the peace process. Next off is the advantage counter the United States federal government should order its special operation forces in Iraq to embed themselves with local forces in the seas using logistic and support deals. The United States should increase its experimental ground force training and adopt an unconventional warfare strategy to respond to Russia and the Baltics. The United States should shift to a light footprint special forces presence in Northeast Asia and enhance its allied partnerships to deter Chinese aggression. Their cats and how to cabinet say that's sufficient to solve it. All across the show that's also the first advantage now. The Iran to Saudi U.S. and military performance is the lynchment of Iranian hegemony over Iraq 1917 direct. Well, these significant assistance from the U.S. imperial structure turbulence being fought by Iran to take over Iraq. The parallel security structure that is emerging that could lead to Hezbollahization of Iraq security structure. The greatly strengthened Iranian who's just redeployed its security against the U.S. and defeating its hand-to-hand against security decisively can undermine the Shiite correction but come to real possibility to motivate security such as setbacks around before the Iranians and military part of the USA. The lynchment of coalition U.S. and power support its women decided decisive U.S. trade and women organs begin to develop U.S. Iraq security cooperation can watch as a counterweight to Iranian influence and more U.S. can more influence in debate generate only back committed to security cooperation can be asked Iraq to place limits on by maintaining Iran unchallenged dominance of the Iraqi security sector and not acceptable impact outweighs in the case it controls conflict escalation. U.S. abandonment of the Gulf Coast of Saudi Republic and Iranian expansion is complete as 316 Iran capitalizing on a vacuum is approaching new sovereignty under the morning now to count on the U.S. overrun against Sunni versus the sentiment of Iran's also short term but this can change geopolitical consequences. Iran consolidate control of the rich oil and gas resources. Iran will dominate the region of Iran want to eliminate the privacy. Iran would see the president of U.S. forces as an obstacle to which will make the dominant region of Iran is already in a position to try to one boost with domination of Iraq and Iran will be in a strong position to data GCC states and Iran and Iraq and Iran which will continue to take over the state. Iran will likely use them to destabilize the conversation with Iran and take over the job of destabilizing Saudi adoption. The U.S. cannot make such hegemony over Iraq and dominating Iranian hegemony would need to pay over the Gulf and give Iran control over the resources which it will use to pose a threat to the region and become co-states if they lose confidence like the look of Russia and China to balance around the Saudis may push Pakistan to get nuclear weapons to them so they can destroy Iran. Present defense consolidation of Gulf oil last key to price stability R13 oil prices have been determined by military consideration reserve situation would to be left on the hands of a regional hegemony military presence in the Gulf helps security access to a stable to supply and ensuring that neither Iraq nor Iraq can Saudi control over the Gulf reserves to protect and waiting and Saudi and feels regards an American military presence in the Gulf presence constitutes a border against consolidation. Any single state being determined to take to world order presence to manipulate prices for its own engine would kind of price activity and buzz. War always going to cause a global nuclear war because 7 in the Middle East is crucial to superpowers dependency unavoidable especially the international and against China, Japan and any independent supply superpowers well nation military power to security access to regulate worldwide armed conflict with the many nuclear states and secure the chance of using nuclear weapons are high now. The yield of militarism results in extinction standardization warfare makes environmental destruction and unsustainable expansion. Double Robinson 14 the sensitive information ecological limits of the front stage to coordinate leading scientists there are to mentorship and control this unprecedented warfare becomes standardized there are new super towards the integrated capital continually get standard clubs there the rest of the faster or less population traits actual state apparatus of it been able to destabilize this right WNT and militarization to be so hard to come under any stable authority performance and prove of his aim to stabilize and to save the system radical responses from below the need for time to produce the discard control to give capital info to process and qualities cannot be until the only viable solution master redistribution of power vote negative restriction to protect the one sees pedagogy securitization the affirmative connection between governance and security lock and permanent militarism. Cipher 15 the U.S. has long had such a diplomatic culture which the two sides will be sort of much leverage to send the regime political expansion organization ready to caution party and mention that actually with the control there's a two with the controls of U.S. making the improvement to ready to the base around the intention to Ukraine was a cost is probably required professional of the research for reversing course the administration ratchet U.S. intervention with over 80% of the global south incursions have brought out another concept word finding the U.S. research the scope of the fog of system information the population has been conditioned to pass at least intervention to policy makers or ever alerts to maintain the moral legitimacy through risk of the public this consent to the U.S. much apparatus complete logic to acted both the neoliberal reduction and pure position conformity neoliberalism depoliticization or manipulation of the run up to an intervention to allow for subordinate through framing of the geopolitical policies that geopolitical policies of the U.S. protective as the Pentagon in the machine towards the stage will see with the mass media to promote no universal patriotic discourse now the first advantage the coin is key to defeating ISIS United conventional forces operating in non-lethally support not targeted special ops and airstrike warn 15 victories achievable through the deployment of conventional forces accompanied by local allies non-lethal counter research about this legal boldness endeavors by conventional forces as a weapon air powered late rule targeting ISIS leaders, SOF supports individual ground operation like individual force of protection, and intelligence grounding SOF cannot operate effectively individual properly in the Philippines, incursion in Latin America, and King Philip support demonstrate how individual can defeat ISIS, the lesson term of legitimacy nation building to succeed, and would again the U.S. military victors are key to avoid the day after dilemma. The alternatives to internecine conflicts torn to 22 in Iraq is not faced with the face with the class day after dilemma. The sound or demolish the Brazil money people. There's no agreement which should hear when covered in the day areas and gets the deal that gets about to the most sophisticated and also there is a new founders right to the population deliberated over these days after tiny but lead to interdicting conflict geopolitical and political grid like that. Well, on my battlefield, but it is similar to 27 with the military such were squandered. This is evident and indisputed territories were Kurdistan ambition governing the Iraqi federal government of the field. Africa comes in ever before to meet while local forces have also like and militarized liberalism now when it comes to the scene of a regular wide west shooting. There was some saying that there was also interest Shiite and Kurdish military competition playing out and be planted to post I guess contest all these forces feel free to operate openly and inform of the background geo last led to some stability, but if they deal and solidified good Shia militias Islamist Abraham and anti-Kurdish or anti-Hajj Sunni or visible soon dodged in a shadow of the current order, but we saw what happened when the US was a huge behind Sunni forces with how high of the resume these they did they will lead a third party the US was his local and to make deals with one another. The US has done but to enable the military division to return that victory for the counties wanted to do more to cement the peace of Washington. The members of the coalition need to use their influence to broker and launch a deal between rival factions. You to some puts Islamic the areas integrated military campaign is key to compel and solve ISIS power to 112 we need to fight and talk each sense of division we need military political strategy to bomb make sense of which to allow me to fight to take those bombing does not make any to make an army patrol only ground force against Arabic career and strategy we need on the ground even if we had even if we had ground we would not have we would not have killed the idea that requires political strategy. That's how the words end. We can't kill the right this ISIS are highly irrational that it will become apparent that we can't wipe out the idea of jihad as a military even if we do short ISIS and our country we need to be ready to talk. We can talk about some grievances and the way of any violence unless there is military pressure. The argument will never be prepared to talk if we listen to passing divine tools military pressure offering away and offering a political way out. Now they're Google evidence about ISIS propaganda, which is obviously something that they were not able to solve. China, India, border were stable. MS-11 is summer merely moving out China into the misadventure along getting other incursions have progressively decreased over the years. Attacked by China and how did the question of how this war said people who have vastly increased in over disgracing enough to spark competition. The fears of a full-fledged conflict were found that the border issue has been handled while the internal issue of India looking eastward says that the evidence political incentive to do so as well as an economic one, which means there's zero reason why they were turned away from that advantage. There had evidence about all SOF forces in Asia. There is evidence about conflict with Japan, which is obviously not something they were able to address. Or zero reason why changing the logistics tail in Iraq would be able to spill over to change the way all special forces operate. They don't have a single card on that. U.S. will never go to war with Russia. Pac 14. The U.S. is not going to war with Russia. This is something they do with a bomb in America. Will never smack Russia with the big state of Russia. Under 4,500 nuclear war tests. Russia to devastate the U.S. as well. The planted for 46 years. American Russia pretending rebels never. Water Russia to force the pack enough average from the significant American loss in goods military retired after 13 years of war equipment is worn out. Or start worn out of the air. Or still troops and not to troops and accounts of the American people are trying to be the war politician tries to sell yet another war. America's allies are tired of all of the China escalation arguments are empirically denied by current propagations in Chicago and the SES, and there's zero reason why SOF forces would be able to just take over those islands. If any operation that they do would have to occur into areas where China claims sovereignty, which would make it likely to escalate as well. Should I go back and read more cards? Do you know sign of India conflict?
Yeah, that'd be great.
No sign of India conflict. Authority advantage frame change 12 there's defeated border exchange how they use remain. It's all since the end of 1962 war the potential for military conflict in the region remains minimal. Look, seriously, even if they were able to make this SOF more effective, that's not a reason why they would be able to solve ISIS propaganda in India.
What is not a basic U.S.-owned logistical infrastructure?
Logistics are fundamentally different than bases. Logistic infrastructure is access rights that the U.S. has to particular installations that are owned by the host country. U.S. bases are permanently established main operating bases and forward operating sites in another country.
What is a forward argument? Okay. Your T-region argument, why isn't the remedy just that you get a competitive offset counterplan?
Because you've already made reasons why you make
Why didn't you ask in CX?
What do you have? It's like it's an unreasonable burden for you to make us ask every
key to all your
question
ground.
about
Yes, no, this is key to all of our ground.
All right,
not some rando answer
your
to
case
give
arguments.
context. We gotta
Case
look at
arguments.
that.
So you read two cards that coin works. Why didn't coin or CT work in Iraq the first time?
Well, our argument is that because we gave up on those strategies at the tail end, we weren't able to consolidate.
Why did we give up on them?
Well,
I'll answer the question. Domestic political pressure.
because there was no fiat and we weren't able to fiat the strategy.
All right, so you fiat.
So the reason that coin failed before is because it was focused on enemy-centric coin, as in defeating the enemy before political settlements, which is why we read a uniqueness counterpoint to change coin
political
strategy.
settlements. The whole point of VSOs is that we build up settlements. We build up villages, militaries from the bottom up.
No, it's not
Our voice
settlement with
evidence.
the local villagers. It's a settlement with ISIS.
I know. Let me ask my question. So the whole point of our strategy is that we build up local forces from the ground up. Or should we say it makes the central government more legitimate? Why does a negotiation with ISIS create a legitimate central government in Iraq?
why does negotiating?
So-
did you
Yes.
just ask why the counterplan doesn't solve your? Wait, sorry. What? Can you? repeat
I'm
that
wondering why
question?
negotiating with ISIS creates a legitimate central government in Iraq,
It's
and I want to know why it
it's
doesn't
not
better
just
than building up
negotiating
local
with ISIS,
militias
it's
like
all-
EAF does.
It's all regional players, and the second thing is like if
So
you
wait,
win that the
does your
counterplan
counterplan
solves
like give
ISIS,
ISIS
then
territory?
it's-
Do you like let ISIS be sovereign?
If we give them political autonomy without granting them a state.
Holy shit.
We could. That could be
And
the
you
result.
think the
Also,
people
the
that are
only
getting killed by them would like that and be
Yeah.
cool
So,
with it?
You think
So
the
the
Shia
thing you should
majority of
look at
Iraq's
is
gonna be
this
like
torn
sick?
card. The turn card on the case is what you should look
Jesus
at. It says
Christ.
that there are
Okay.
already settlements that are being made between the Kurdish
Yeah,
populations
that's-
and Sunni groups, including
It's
ISIS.
also
This is
absurd.
not
Your
true
statement
for
of just
Java.
like, do you think people being
Right.
killed by them would accept that? Yes, the Iraqi state has been killing Kurds for quite a long time, and the Kurds have still accepted some form of
Yeah, that's
limited
the worst.
autonomy.
We should build up their local. Okay. Your presence, DA.
Also, your only
what
impact on
have-
local autonomy
what
is
have you,
ISIS, which means
what
that
have you had that
when the counterplan
VSOs are
solves
going to cause us
escalation,
to
then
lose?
there's no
What have you had that
conflict.
VSOs are going to cause our footprint in the Middle East to become like so terrible that Saudi Arabia gets a nuke?
It's a perception-based argument. So Iran
What is
already
the-
has a
so
large control
how
over
does-
Iraq's government. Our argument is that if the U.S. were to abandon
Iraq
things
has
like
control.
logistical bases,
I'm
then Iran
has control because they're funneling money to Shia militias because currently
That's-
Sunni
that's-
forces
that's-
can't beat
that's-
Iraq.
That's not true.
Our act
There's
makes it
Shia
so we can
militias,
beat
there's
back
also the
ISIS.
Shia state. Like you're incorrect in your perception that Iran is only
Absolutely correct.
funneling money to Shia militias when they also have broad-based support within the government. Our argument is that
They have broad-based support
perceptually.
because there is no legitimate government.
No,
which
the
was
winter
there
that's-
actually.
No,
is
that's,
not.
that's just like not true. Your statement that just like nobody believes there's a legitimate government in Iraq is just bullshit, and you're just like asserting that because you think you
we've
can.
read,
It's
like,
false.
9
Our
minutes of
evidence
my
says that the
statement.
United States' current presence makes it perceived like we have a
I'll take
stake in that.
the political settlement counterplan, the advantage counterplan, the Iran disad, the anyone not ready? Okay. ISIS threatens the global order by creating spheres of influence that no longer peacefully cooperate, causes rape, hard nuclear, that's archaic evidence. SOF can operate without conventional forces. Nuisance said mobility is the best for force protection. Their second card is an affirmative card because day after conflicts destabilize Iraq. If we have a large military footprint, we empower local forces, which is the most effective way to cement long-term stability and government legitimacy. Is our weights evidence. We do not stop bombing. We make it effective embedding SOF on front lines ensures there's no collateral damage. That's our Orango evidence. We solve ISIS propaganda by undercutting the credibility of their message by changing the tide of the war in 72 hours. That's our bald evidence. ISIS causes Sino-Indian nuclear war. Bangladesh extremism causes instability, which undermines India's Act East policy, key to prevent conflict over borders. ISIS is not staying in Iraq, ruined by Bangladesh instability. Their Sino-Indian stability card is 5 years too old. ISIS will use cyber attacks. March 15, ISIS is seeking to build on cyber attacks against U.S. targets. Its hackers have tried to penetrate communities with electricity against regularly through radiation. Really specifically broken bands of nuclear power plants. There are not on those fields. Nuclear war till we're told. The cyber attack data simply get the same supply. Every military base, not control the base, with a short arm, but down on supplies are run on the TV. Could do it already since the tech years have been shut down. The weapons system was left without power. Officials confirmed the threat, including George said the CIA director has used the Pentagon and the war. Cyber attack engaged in the active war with men with full-scale nuclear weapons. SOF advantage. SHAR 1AC is our card that says spill over because operators who experiment on the ground in Iraq will share tactics and therefore spill up. Yes, U.S.-Russia war. SOF prevents Russian adventurism in the Baltics. Are using unconventional warfare to escalate conflict. Nuclear war is likely because of miscalculation, nationalism, and alliance commitments. Effective partnering with SOF forces is key to solve China nuclear war in Asia. They're using unconventional warfare to escalate conflict. It is likely because of Windows opportunity, escalatory pressures, and use it or losing mentality. That's our 1AC cards. Now, the topicality. Presence refers to deployed forces and infrastructure. DoD definition, GO1, GO defense. Overseas presence makes it formally station force rotation to deployed forces, temporarily deployed forces, infrastructure, ready to conduct deployments, build operations. We need the plan reduced to logistics and support the special operation forces in Iraq that includes a range of military forces from 1AC crossing space interpretations and created transnational line of the past decades. So the kind of trouble number 4 military bases, but there have been a growth number of countries losing 4 military presence. There has also been a shift away from massive troop deployments and small credit facilities, but in terms of gathering, training, military development, and community command reasons, federal bases, certification, what is considered new international counterparts to Asia, the Middle East, Africa. We remove bases. LM-16, the U.S. has decided to build 2 military bases in Iraq, 2 bases set up in the Hamar region. The U.S. built bases running 2 other bases in Hamar. Counter-interpretation, significance, qualitative, random, also 15 adjective important. We meet ISIS and Iraq are the core national security channels. Urban 15. There is no question that number 1 security threats to the nation remains terrorism, terror falls. ISIS takes down Iraq and Syria, the heart of the Middle East. Regional approaches to military presence in the Middle East are analytically bankrupt. Argumentation preserves topic education. Course 7. Priorities retains conventional force modernization of agency priorities vary by subject and individual companies standardized one side by all approaches to security cooperation when it builds a very positive security priorities and threat never saving the meaning area reasonability. You should have a high threshold for topicality to avoid crowding up valuable debates over substance. They should have come to the NDT ready to go big against ISIS. Other topicality argument, counter-interpretation, reduce means to diminish American heritage, love to bring down diminish, and anything on the inside or within the plan reduces within ASPG. Americans who can, the inside within prefer our interpretation. It solves their often by logging and links to Middle East. This says that they are not ready for this debate. They are preparing to fail. Second, their interpretation mixes burdens as a plan on basis of reduction. What happens after the plan is a question for literature and link debates which promotes better debating. We meet the plans on non-face reduction and military presence. In the ASPG, what happens after the plan is distinct, as well, or analysis focused on U.S. overseas military presence, not in use military force based in the United States for the global posture that decrease overseas, but the analysis on threats perhaps force, i.e. within the state in the U.S. For structure now, we define the strategic choice policy confirm the plans for overseas military presence. Forcing implementation debates is bad. 1, limiting ground their interpretation opens the door to an infinite number of plan mechanisms that go beyond simple reductions in presence. Discuss core negative ground by law and affirmative to spike out of deterrence. This has created an endless list of new advantage ground by stationing troops on the moon. Second, their interpretation is inferior. Locks in offset competition which directs affirmative ground and hurts education by focusing broad resolution debate over specific policies. Discouraging in-depth class and obviously causes to check this argument. Political settlement counterplan doesn't solve the SOF's advantage. 1, large footprint fails embedding advisors without reducing their logistics and support to at least twice as many troops as Newsom. This incentivizes whole station forces from fighting effectively. That's maximally counterplan guarantees a huge increase in troops by 15. Put troops in the front line over let human support 15 people over 150 J-Tech for embedded in mainstream manufacturing unified media moving close to the battlefield security burst easily on member aircraft. Second, small footprint is key. Future security environments require a small logistical footprint for operational success. The counterplan means they cannot experiment and learn counter unconventional warfare. That's key for future missions against Russia and China. Thompson 13. Tightening defense budgets may limit range ahead of GA. These able to maintain less than the cost single aircraft carrier as good for the ultimate hedge capability, expanded defense options, deal with unforeseeable vulnerability. Then any of the forces got quite ready to continue in the 20th century. American way of forwards and flight long range conventional power protection for basing massive attrition, medium to new pattern of operations characterized by dispersion. Now, kinetic action enabled for force would place a premium assault senior force with life with logistics open capable of operating far forward independently. Such force is the most valuable option for future power protection. The force capable of this massive simply maintain the size of the most galaxy. And at the time, so doesn't solve ISIS. There is no evidence that ISIS will negotiate a settlement or that it would stop Islamic terrorism. If anything, it would expand it. Cooperating with non-extremist Sunni forces is the key. The conflict fails at that one. Autoimmune response to a large military footprint increases local resistance to nation-building efforts. The small footprint approach is the best means. That's why it's 2 building partner capacity. Iraqi forces lead the fight against ISIS. Key to increase the legitimacy of the central government while instilling confidence in the Iraqi military. Trust in U.S. forces is key. Electoral 11 and effective population mobilization constructed both sexes. U.S. forces are recognized beneficial effect from original local populations embrace that U.S. forces are representing occupation, but against facilitate good governance and stability, progress in local levels, essential legitimacy, and governance to go veto, placing emphasis on damage the root cause stability by the root cause stability, living in the village, veto, special forces, great nurture, and as the successful conditions go to the advantage counterplan, loses the war against ISIS, makes us vulnerable and large footprint, incentivizes ISIS to use asymmetric IED attacks to mix presence, obsolete, that's using critical vulnerabilities, empirically caused mission failure, gender 11 case studies, confirm the critical vulnerabilities, former important determinants, military outcomes, and possession, military related, and military assets, exposure of materials, spiritual advances, truly, one only in each case, that's when the accuracy, critical vulnerability, adversary, crisis related vulnerability, amelioration, in national dimension, and make focus on U.S. military operations, Americans did not try to influence Iraqi in 2002 because that number Iraqis welcome them to liberate state subordinate efforts to influence Iraqis through imperative force protection and chasing insurgency, being non-protectional will, the dominant dimension of attack on the United States, and the primary cause of U.S. defeats Iraq informs the entire irregular warfare strategy for regime with the lack of success in Iraq's avoidance falling on favor with the political military establishment blowing the hot. Everyone should not throw the baby over the bathwater. Their elements with restraining for future operation would inform future irregular warfare more efficiently. Critics have more traditional military approach and sustainable purely military solution to with politics and important for future peace. Conditionalities of voting issue would disincentivize it to each super in the best offense and off-base positions and holds negative research too low. Permutation do both. And go back to the other kind of plan, permutation do both as well. And go to the Iran dissent. We saw that 1, shifting to fast of offensive operations and building the legitimacy of Iraqi government checks Iran. The plan is key. Roman 16. The impetus for pending Mosul operations. Taliban these big figures between Iran is listening to martials about the Iran is doing Iraqi Mosul movements and ISIS and Iraqi puppets will seize power to control Iran's Iran's Sunni population will guard the Sunni fanatics and stand for the Biden to make concessions in return for government assistance. Kurds, militias, and Western losers ruling tribes against one more likely 2 Sunni alternatives. The plan creates them by using light footprint special forces and village stability operations that creates Iraqi autonomy and governance from the bottom up. That's whites is nationally empowers Sunnis, which checks Iranian influence. Mentor 16. The choice of who to engage will affect engagement. To the Iraqi Sunni community actors working alongside others beginning offensive forces in the crisis and threats. There is no monolithic Sunni group. And hope for Sunni awakenings contingent on uniting these actors and awakening showing specific each government. There must be a better understanding of legitimate actors in the ground and necessary to understand change demands of dynamic community. There has been a 180-degree turn for federal many representatives. Now, want to change the government to reach nothing short of the emerging United Nations to work within the Sunni voice and helping bring about another Sunni awakening. The plan leads to more expansive operations by reducing the logistical requirements. It fills vacuums made by Iran. I call that 16 integration and already having the rights of ISIS and increase Iran influence Iran security support has been insufficient to retake major church and military without the usual poor governance and sole base of Roman Dagger, Washington system, restoring military balance in favor of Iraqi national security forces, America must today expand versus professionalized natural army things to be delivered condemnation, force liberation, and settle governance questions. Iraqi now lost by Iran, Washington's opportunity to rebuild influence. Iraqi want a regional policy with Indian assurances they need to navigate regional security and rivalries, and America has to back strong support exists for human relations with Iraq. There's no end to the oil dissent. As to what we're still doing stuff in Iraq and oil fits that's the plan. And low oil prices won't cause a crisis. AP16 lower oil prices will be positive force neutral for the economy because they're all literally doing this transferring from oil producers to oil consumers. The conditions into a broader turmoil, the energy market, not nearly taking forward from the housing market. BO authority take control of the investment business, the energy will the 2% of total loans. Critique framework only evaluate link arguments based on the plan. Key to clash since we only have comparative solvency evidence about the plan and more logical since thinking and acting are an opportunity cost. Their framework alternative arguments distract from institutional analysis. This undermines their effectiveness and that offense while searching efforts to displace politics and IPs everyday people trust away from the derailment for political agenda to support and exercise authority themselves being not adequate subject for work and seals the subject to take efforts people on the mouth of winning institutional authority search which is to replace the intellectual which collapse system with our brain which replacing evil change requires symbolic resistance to the plan integration of safe authority permutation to discount to both discounts their impacts prior assumptions disposed in the pessimists and better to adapt to globalization. Aspect 7 criticism of globalization enacting the 4 continued advantage despite the consensus liberalization promotes growth and business for war. Globalization exposes corporations to outside competition requires greater transparency government policy making efficient benefits outweigh loss from increased market power and imperialism goods support and adversely affected by globalization even that much longer are better off. Thus conservative negative effective subgroups always lead to less favorable assessment in the presence of strong population growth looking at total number of world leads predictably pessimists get sentiment empirical work which leads to specific false measures of poverty outcomes provide a far better basis of different globalization supporters and critics and expand like differences in priorities and priorities mobilizing anti-systemic movements damages institutions that regulate capital makes the system more violent abolishing 2K movements the having of unwanted post-revolutionary regime not being able to produce polarization any significant degree nor evidence to be political equity because the world has remained capitalist regimes not able to catch up with the wealthy countries. The result has been a monumental dissolution with the anti-Semitic movements and major results in massive disinvestment from state structures. This officers and anti-Semites the immediate consequence of social fears have escalated this institution negative spiral and more chaotic violence and more state funded self-analytical kind of situation which begins ability of states to limit the spiral reject your academic interrogation is ahistorical means their alternative frameworks should be rejected burn and fire. The best thing to stop doing the things being neoliberal is the hegemonic project stories about neoliberal reduce social relations to digital elective hegemonic process of liberation that have been triggered by movements against the left against status forms of social policy political realignment can therefore be understood in terms of straightforward shift from collectivism to individuals and theories of neoliberal great people to recognize new forms of individualized collective action in environmental politics and sustainable new forms of activism. target new forms of action.
We'll take Prop 633.
Yeah.
615. All right, you good?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some of your internal links to this ISIS advantage. Your Wheats card is pretty good at saying that the SOS is good and useful because it can promote bottom-up development and has a light footprint. However, there's no real connection to your Newson card, which is the one that you pointed to describe the logistics tail. So what card do you have that says people only backlash to the logistics tail?
The connection between Newson and Whites is that they're both talking about village stability operations in 2001 that took place in Afghanistan. There's a highlighted line in Whites that says that.
Yeah, no,
It's
I understand, but what
Yes,
exactly is the reason why? Yeah,
What?
okay. Sorry, Beavis has
So
one.
this alarm card that you say gets rid of bases, one is about 2 bases that have not been set up in the Hamrar region, and 2, the only base it identifies are Air Force bases where there are no special operations forces. Does the plan get rid of either of those things?
The plan gets rid of the bases that logistics and support tail currently reside
Wait,
in. There are different military bases that are cropping up across
Okay,
Iraq.
so let's go back to the question that I was asking you.
Yeah,
Dan.
absolutely.
So your
So-
Newson, hold on, no, you were rambling about village stability operations. What is the internal link between eliminating the logistics tail and increasing
Yeah.
village stability operations?
Absolutely. Newson says that when logistics and support tail exists, special operating forces will not go on the type of offensive, unconventional operations that are needed to defeat ISIS because they're
Hold on,
too.
but what card do you have that says if you get rid of the logistics tail, that forces them to go do village
The
stability
Newson card.
operations?
The Newson card talks about how in Afghanistan they didn't have a whole bunch of troops there to protect them. They were living with the locals, learning their
Okay,
concerns, and
hold
then
on.
using them in the fight.
But that doesn't make any sense. Just living with the locals is not a village stability operation.
Right,
Nor does it
it's-
enhance the credibility of the central government. What is your internal
So
link
the
between
White
getting
card
rid of
says
the tail
that the
and
most
forcing those
effective
operations?
way to increase the legitimacy of the central government is to build a connection between the fighters and the population. Once the population thinks
No,
the
but
fighters have their interests,
your wits evidence is just about the status quo, though. It just says
No,
special
it's not.
operation
It's
forces
a
are useful.
theoretical
It doesn't
study
even talk
that
about
analyzes the
logistics
best way to
operations.
solve unconventional conflicts and concludes that the app is the best way to solve ISIS.
It says, it says,
The
quote,
first
light
line of the
footprint
card,
is an SOF trademark. This is an advantage. It's talking about current SOF
It's
operations.
talking about how
What is the internal link
operations
between
in
the plan and
Afghanistan
boosting
that
those
we
operations?
used to do were incredibly
That's not true.
effective.
That's your
Says
Newson card,
ISIS
which is a different card.
No,
Why
Voight
exactly
says-
would people
Voight
living with these
said-
villages
there is a
cause
connection
village
with-
stability?
There is a connection between the Afghanistan operations, the Newson card, and the Voice card. Both of them talk about the
No,
exact
but
same operations that the app does.
You're talking. The app is not implement village stability operation. I'm asking
It
you
is.
between the plan and your internal link. What card do you have
Yeah.
that says withdrawal forces the operation?
Newson says we need to reduce the logistics and support
Where?
tail.
Where
That
does
is
it say
literally the highlighted line. Like, I will go to the 1AC card and read it again for you.
Forces need to partner with Iraq and Syria and Kurdish fighters. Can 200 commandos change the tide of a war? I'm reading your bold.
The U.S. must reduce the logistics and support tail. Small is beautiful and absolutely necessary.
But your Newt's card doesn't say that leads to village stability operations, though, which is in your internal link.
Small is beautiful.
So that's not an internal link.
A
to your
desired productivity can be found in VSOs in Afghanistan, and undesirable is in Iraq with ISIS.
I mean, just what else do you think they would do? They're just gonna die. Jesus Christ.
T military presence, then the K. Oh, sorry. T military presence, then the counterplan with conditionality, then the K. Which was the spec ops advantage counterplan.
Yeah.
T bases. T bases. And then which one I found out?
The advantage counterplan with condo, and then the K. Alright, that works. Alright, everybody good?
A significant reduction in military presence requires cloaking your base. You prefer ace point is the only evidence with the intent to find and the intent to exclude. You prefer that over ad hoc contextual interpretation, especially when there are only piece of evidence does not define military presence divides overseas presence, which is uniquely bad. Any other interpretation more expensive than makes predictable limits impossible force. It's the only way to determine significance. You can't make a qualitative determination between the difference between a tank and 100 troops that you can't determine whether the affirmative removes the base from a region, which makes the difference between our interpretation and theirs. Every single asset and troop after. It's also an important distinction. Establishing presence based on things like aid, getting ready to use force, etc. are all functions of presence, not the presence itself, which means our interpretation is the best limit. Second is the size of the region. The topic makes explosion risk huge. Each region has various types of military activity, but they all have a base that will be a little bit later. Any other interpretation opens up the whole map, topical asset of their interpretation under infrastructure and logistics capabilities are stopping arms deals, Saudi Arabia, removing sanctions, removing our peacekeeping force from the Great Horn, removing our military aid to the Kurdish Peshmerga, removing the F-23, removing a single missile from Bahrain. All of those are supplements to basing, but they do not themselves constitute military presence risk by directionality, especially when the affirmative can reduce a security role or a mission that is ineffective in the South. Only a base blocks and unidirectional graphic. Here's a list of bases in the Gulf, Iraq, in 50 Kuwait, troops defending across the Arshad, Al-Tuareg, and also leaving UAE station troops in Al-Jafar, the troops to operate over the aircraft U.S. deployed. F-22 caught aircraft one, the numbers of U.S. military personnel falls to 200 Bahrain. There's significant personnel operating under the Al-Siki, East Air base for surveillance aircraft stations, Saudi Arabian military personnel are all based in the East Village Air Base, Qatar, UAE, Air Base forward headquarters for CENTCOM. The base houses significant equipment for the U.S. military Iraq. The number of troops, the U.S. troops in Iraq was reduced to 150 personnel to protect the U.S. embassy as of September 2014. U.S. troops committed to train, support, and advise Iraqi security forces in addition to permanently based U.S. troops that have been meeting requests. The U.S. government has operated a secret UAV base in Saudi Arabia. That's necessary. The cult of flexibility incentivizes shotgun negative strategies like breaking debates and decreases the depth of argumentation, which internally turns the majority of their offense. A fair number of affirmatives still maintain rejoinder and clash, which solves their arbitrary self-serving standard for what counts as an affirmative. T version of the affirmative, they can close the base in Kuwait and still say that the special operations forces that operate out of there would be withdrawn as a result. They say we meet because of international logistics. They have to be owned by the United States. The affirmative says that they can change the logistics and support tail of special operations in Iraq. That is consistent with an operation that makes the plan, that is consistent with a particular operation. That makes the plan conditional. They can just say that the village stability operations don't include actually getting rid of the base, which means we have to trust the affirmative before we get locked in negative ground. The plan does not close any of your bases. Those things don't exist in sexual or about air operations, which is not special. Special ops is their own to see evidence alone. And 16 United States have decided to build new military bases in Iraq and Province 2 in an alleged bid to counter these two bases will be set up in the Hamas region in Washington as well. That's also been leading a so-called international coalition with warplanes of the U.S. and allies carrying out the sorties. Reduced means diminished size can't include refuse future increases. Guy 91 the plane meaning of the various words suggest that refuse to accept is not equivalent to reduce. One cannot reduce something that's not been accepted as seconds. A precondition to reduce the distinction is reflecting the distinction of definition of words reduced to define. And they are defined dimension size. Facilities are not bases. Harvard D89 the term base or facility connotate very separate service set of circumstances. Base has come to define a situation in which the user nation has unrestricted access and freedom to operate facility. It's the term of the host nation exerts ultimate sovereignty where the user nation access is contingent, restricted, and subject to ad hoc decisions. Their counter-interpretation of overseas military presence is the worst. It opens up the topic Crawford 2003 unanimous of overseas presence, the placement of forces in infrastructure and repositioning of equipment, sea lift, airlift, facelift, ground transportation, air refueling assets, mobility, infrastructure, material handling of equipment, reposition forces, stocks and supplies, augment forward deployed forces, particularly true because it includes mission objectives. Dispute 94 overseas presence describe both a military posture and a military mission ambiguity. It's made worse by the fact that the term has been used since 1960, but never been defined in the JCS dictionary. The over limits argument is incoherent arbitrary interpretation of the floor, not a ceiling, but still leaves room for active nuance and active advantages which are based on possible responses to the affirmative withdrawal strategy. But you should not be afraid of overlimiting on this topic. They get great dissats with awesome advantages which should be exploring in depth, not hiding. You should judge by quality, vast amount of quantity there. Reasonability arguments is mediocrity that's not good enough. You should be judged by the counter interpretation, not just the affirmative, which is the impact by limits argument that encourages the race to the margins because the combination of all reasonable interpretations way too large is arbitrary and causes judgment invention which automatically clashes the worst for debates overall. Condo. New apps without disclosure incentivize malcontent, shotgun negative strategy, labor, debates, and argument of responsible feature. Unique voting issues also straight turn all their condo bad impacts. Condo is good against new apps. This exacerbates the already intrinsic reactionary mechanism being negative keeping ways necessary to check moral hazard. Big plans and small apps require non-risky strategies to balance out new side bias and strategic and turn strategic to you because the affirmative is forced into specific offense and debate the nuance of the two, not just the ideologies behind it. There's no contradiction to all arguments or even misstatements, which means they can concede out of them if they actually are the other dumb turn tenuous positions are good. The affirmative defense for specific arguments instead of broad ideology, the critique. The one easy description of the world is perpetual insecurity thrives in neoliberal necessity to control risk through consolidation of the U.S. at the center of global politics, which results in perpetual warfare and makes all their impacts inevitable. Using the strategy of connecting security to governmentality, the affirmative becomes constituted by the risk politics of emergent challenges that drive into failed actions. If we win any of our link arguments, also proves the permutation and alternative solvency arguments are just part of maintaining the imperial paradigm that allows geopolitical expansion in places like China, where they want to use special ops forces to combat cause the war. More broadly, all of their evidence about military presence being bad, why China's afraid of things like Japan in the region, and why ISIS will always backlash to existing U.S. strategy because of anti-Americanism and existing U.S. picking sides. The affirmative changes none of those, but it only defines those zones of warfare and justifies intervention in the name of their protection. All of the one sees impacts are just impacts to our criticism, except for we control uniqueness, insecurity becomes self-fulfilling prophecy of the current states. That's our cyber evidence, our framework argument to judge. It's an intellectual comparing committee value system. You should validate the one sees a policy story. The affirmative should have to defend the one sees as well as broader intellectual structures. That comparatively outweighs the marginal reduction in fairness from us reading the criticism. First, we control the impact arguments. Debates are only valuable insofar as they inculcate us with particular political subjectivities. As an educator and critic of argument, your role is to vote for the arguments that develop the best ones. The outcome of the plan is not relevant if we win them. It is situated within a problematic ideological structure. Second, the system survives on eclipsing radical imagination where it claims that there is no alternative instead of centering questions around how best to solve global problems. They reduce debates just around the question of presence, good, bad, which is the worst form of addressing the global institution, which only turns out Welsh arguments framework is an independently for argument 215 becoming higher education begins with the recognition that education is not training but civic engagement, critical thinking, and democratic agency. Education must be viewed as a force that makes democratic practice impossible. We don't need pedagogy rooted in conformity. Education needs pedagogy of disruption, the pedagogy that includes lifting common ideas into a public space and using criticism to train change theory, intellectual responsibility outside of power and society incapable of questioning itself. The importance of the university is a place for critical learning, dialogue, and social justice advocacy becomes more imperative. Academics have an obligation to further the activation of knowledge and agencies, crucial to sustaining democratic democracy, in which higher education plays an important pedagogical role. The question should not be of competitive status quo or policy option. Rather, those things don't exist. You don't have your hands on the levers of power, which means the only thing you have to do is to understand the way the affirmative functions. The adaptability arguments fail. One is warfare is inevitably becomes normalized by standardization in the name of security. Computerized warfare, drones, bunker buster bombs, waste dumping, and negative externalities have changed the way the global warfare operates. In the first place, they have focused on the wrong thing. The casualties of violence are simply surplus populations. If we believe their interpretation, second, globalization through creeping incrementalism of the U.S. global reach increases financial instability, economic inequality, and competition for resources, and environmental degradation, which turns all of their extinction first arguments. It flips uniqueness because any policy that buys into unsustainable social metabolism disregards those terminal impacts. It turns the case and outweighs the failure to interrogate structural conditions of social, political, and economic things that drive social crisis, led to the perceived short-term symptom-based solutions that result in the expansion of the state and the military. That means that you never focus on the root causes. Their faith in the hegemonic project uniquely recreates a regime where the Western subject constantly needs to repair itself into a form of production that contributes to the ventriloquization of life that becomes a telos of modernity that ignores violent evolution of globalization in the first place. Permutation is a voting issue. It severs the ONEC ideological entrenchment in the neoliberal system, and it links to our criticism. Link debate was done a little bit above, and I'll extend another one here. The paradox of withdrawal. They transform the pedagogical practices of governance to military readiness that can be mobilized at any time in an effort to reshape or render secure the dangerous other identified as the insecure enemy. In this context is ISIS, China, and India, and the border. Which that logic justifies the production of mappable zones of expectation that guarantees future preemption. It may not be through presence itself, but through arms cells, drones, missiles, bombers, etc. That protection becomes the imperative, justifying U.S. invasion. It also causes shadow armies to turn to decipher 2006 and 2006. The 2007, the 2006, the population paper, troop patrol psychologists interpret these as cognitive dissonance with the Gulf War high-tech weaponry would make a combat anti-septic war would eliminate the bad guys, not the innocent civilians in the temple of intervention in Korea. So did the population's fascination with techno war posting out for a little simple go in and get out fast. The public will support military adventurism, but would not human cost. The public is drawn to support military adventurism. Conversely, was confronted with the reality of enthusiasm, ways of shaping the events is a great strategy about the application of military force to achieve and defined by the elite. Militarism is a dominant concept of reality, but informing all modes of thought and behaviors with regard to the forcible actions of a state. The permutation, obviously, they say the plan leads to movements. Obviously, fucking not. Their evidence says that we need to combat global militarism. The affirmative locks us into that global militarism, which means it fails the alternative is necessary. The Barnett evidence is about specific historical analysis, which we've obviously done, but the alternative is uniquely key in this instance. First, it's necessary to challenge the way that the existing global militarism operates, not only on a physical level, but also through the practices of security. This means that you have to critique the solutions of withdrawal by saying that the question that they've chosen to answer is the wrong one in and of itself. The imperative of security drives the politics that justify mobilization of the academy itself to reshape and render secure a dangerous other, which means that that is a prior question. But we don't need an alternative either. That's Brand 2009's legitimation of neoliberalism takes place through criticism by intellectuals. This is the starting point of the discussion process to the impacts of neoliberalism. The focus is not on the question of the post-neoliberal, rather to consider the about neoliberal as a perspective at all. Post-neoliberal approaches vary in complexity. We aim to create space for reflections on questions like who, where does consent to neoliberal policy and politics remain when tends still to be neoliberal and unquestioned and what?
Ready? Yeah. On the first standard, predictable limits, why isn't this app predictable given one, ISIS is the biggest military problem in the world today, and second,
Yes.
you've been reading an
ISIS
ISIS app for the last 2 tournaments.
I don't even, like, what are you talking about? We've been reading an ISIS app.
Oh, we couldn't predict this
First of all,
app.
that's not relevant. T is not a question of do we have ground. It's a question
Really?
of what the topic looks like. Yes.
So,
Yes,
like,
the app is not the fucking same thing as
So it's our fault
get
that
out
you
of the
couldn't
goal path.
predict ISIS. Okay.
No,
you
it's-
read this wood
What
card.
are you talking about? It's not about advantages.
Gotcha.
It's about the plan.
You have this. You read the wood card, which is the description of all the bases in ASPG. The part that talks about Iraq talks about how we have 150 personnel as of September 2014.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
That's
obviously before we ramped up the war against ISIS.
We
Why should we
increased to 4,500 trainers and other special operations forces. We did not
Do you have a
build a special operations base.
Okay,
You have a
so-
card that said that we did.
Okay,
I'm not gonna read one
we'll
for
get to
you.
that in a second, but this card goes on to say that we have a secret UAV base in
Yeah,
Saudi
exactly.
Arabia. Is that topical?
No, those are
Wait,
facilities.
why not?
The secret base, that's not counted under U.S. definitions of military presence.
So, this card says that
No,
this
that
secret
is
UAV
argument.
base exists.
So,
Okay, so what's the difference then?
Here.
Let's talk about the difference between
Yeah,
base
the
and facility.
difference-
What
the
needs
difference
to
between
occur
bases
for a
and
base to
facilities.
be a base?
a base needs to be owned by the United States, governed by a status of forces agreement, and defined as a main operating base by the United
Okay.
States federal government.
And how many of those are there in the Arab states of the Persian Gulf?
Majority of the things that I listed are main operating bases and forward operating sites.
So if I reduce one of them, for
Yeah.
example, in Bahrain, that's topical.
Yes.
One of them in Oman, one of them in UAE.
You have to reduce. There's not a U.S. owned government base in Oman, which is what the
okay.
difference is.
Okay, cool. So we read the same al-Alam card.
I know. I just
It's
recut it.
talking about how Washington is leading a coalition with warplanes carrying out sorties.
Yeah.
Why, if we reduce
Sorties
those
are not
things,
special
then-
operations forces.
You
You
don't
don't
think
reduce.
that
You reduce the
sorties are-
tail end support.
How do you think
spec
we,
ops forces? They
what do
don't
you think-
support spec ops
How
forces.
do we rescue forces? We reduce quick reaction
Do
forces.
you know what sorties do? They don't rescue. They bomb.
You're asking the guy who wrote this app if I know
Yeah, I
what
don't
the
think
app
you
does.
know what sorties do. They bomb. They don't rescue.
You don't have a link on the critique about this app because your cards say
No, that cipher card's
the-
about the app.
Which card? Sorry.
The cipher card in the 1 and C. That's why I didn't have to reread
So,
one because I read
to
one.
achieve an end, these ends are defined by the power elite. That is a line from the card. The entire thesis of the app
You read
is that
one line
our
from the card.
interests need to be aligned with the people in Iraq.
Yeah,
the
I'm
Sunni
saying that
locals,
you
not the
use
people
the guys.
in the United
You
States.
use the guys
How
of
is
the
it
U.S.
about the
being
app?
aligned with interests in Iraq when what they want is for the U.S. to get out.
That's what
Who's
they
they?
wanted in 2006, which
No,
we
that
critiqued.
cipher card's from 2015.
Who
I
is
know,
they?
but your cipher card is talking about where the 2006 operations failed.
The
So are we.
2006
We agree. What type of
Operation
non-military
Civilians?
solutions solve ISIS?
What's that?
If military solutions are bad, what non-military solutions solve ISIS?
We don't think the military can be an effective solution.
I understand. So how does your app solve
it would
that?
probably involve a lot of political solutions with ISIS.
A lot of political solutions. Like
Yeah.
what?
Why is it
Like
not political?
recognizing their legitimate grievances that Iraq has suppressed the Sunni population,
And then
recognizing.
and then doing what? They're like, no, we don't care. We want to kill people.
I mean, the alternative is that we bomb them into submission, which is much worse.
That's not the app.
I'm sending it out now. It'll be the settlements counter plan, the second advantage, then the ISIS advantage.
Settlement.
Sorry,
2-1.
we'll take some
You mean
just the Iran DA.
Okay, alright, sorry. 7 seconds used.
Yeah.
So now it's the Iran DA, the settlements counter plan,
Yeah.
advantage 2, advantage 1.
No, sorry, one more second. We gotta keep the other count.
Sure, okay, alright. 4 more seconds.
Another
used.
4 seconds.
Alright, Iran, advantage counter plan, settlements counter plan, SOF, ISIS.
That's the one without cards. in it.
I know, where was it?
It's right after Prince DA.
What was it paid for?
Advantage 2, advantage 1.
So Iran, advantage counter plan, other counter plan, advantage to advantage.
Yep.
ready? Run, not going for casino, impact, oil, spice, under advantage, counterplay, not going for a permutation test, competition, sunlight, counterplay, not going for a permutation test, Dave, competition, can you hand me those clothes?
Yep.
Advantage 2. Here's the big problem with this advantage. The affirmative has identified a strategic shift that's necessary within the overall special operation forces. However, the plan only provides a tactical shift. There is zero reason why getting rid of logistic details within Iraq would lead to a spillover in all special operation forces in the Baltic and South China Seas and East China Sea. They have dropped that even if they do enable South China SOF forces to operate, they will not be able to solve China war. What the fuck are they going to do? Go to an island in the SES and just sit there and say, fuck off China? No, they have territorial interests. There's zero reason why this would actually be able to de-escalate the crisis, and there's no word in the 2AC that indicates that that's actually necessary. You can see that escalation empirically denied. They've provoked and added this in Congress and SES empirically. However, it's never actually escalated the Russia argument. They have conceded into escalation. There are several reasons. Public will mutually ensure destruction, economics, and 4 other reasons that they have not answered. They have also conceded that there's zero reason why putting them within the Baltics would just automatically deter Russia from being wanting to escalate. They have historical and economic incentives in the region, which means that there is zero reason why changing the way operations occur within Iraq would change the way that they occur globally. This is empirically proven by the fact that they've identified a successful SOF mission that existed in Afghanistan, yet that didn't provide the overall effective training that leads to a global revolution and spillover. That was all cross-ex. I'm just going to read one more impact events card and call it a day. No, U.S.-China war test card 1031. The U.S. and China will focus on management differences, both sides read and maintain dialogue and follow protocols to prevent clashes, support of by and plan business advice on officers remain on track to be difficult to get the publish and remark on another representative conflict is faster with and instruments in avoiding war, so its leadership can focus on development, make it all likely China to the U.S. military and head into war. Also, one link argument for the criticism. This advantage is just like we train them over here, therefore we make our entire military awesome, and that is able to deter all conflict. There's zero way you're able to get out of the permanent militarism criticism when you made an argument about enhancing and speeding up militarism. ISIS advantage is the same. Problem exists for this one. The affirmative provides a tactical change, however, that does not lead to an overall strategic shift. I'm going to go through every single one of their internal cards. There were Rongo evidence sites, massive ultimate causalities. This is that when Iraqi ground force and American aircraft began assaulting the city of Ramadi, caused a lot of poverty. Sunni families are voicing resentment of the Shia-dominated government. It says without political reconciliation and an ambitious program to rebuild the Sunni areas destroyed by war, or at least vital services like electricity and water, those places are likely to be fertile ground for ISIS, Islamic State, and to the future. There are insights. Pollock, who says he's worried that military gains in Iraq without political overhauls would be counterproductive. Then the bottom of the card says the Iraqi government is literally bankrupt, so they're not able to fund any of these things. There's zero reason why shifting in the SOF forces and getting rid of the logistics deals would enable them to be able to build up villages and make them no longer hate the United States government. Their nuisance evidence does not have a spillover card. Yes, it does say that small is beautiful, but that is just to reassure Donnie's ego. And to reassure Donnie's ego, their internal card says that they rely on air bases that are owned by Iraq. It says that It says that the Islamic State has shattered Iraqi government bases. It says that we come to expect that we need the Death Star hovering above us with endless logistic capabilities. That's referring to capabilities in the other GCC states, but their plain text only gets rid of the logistic tails within Iraq, and it's a decent presumption argument that indicates that we don't have any of those bases actually within Iraq, which means that the affirmative is not able to solve anything. They would still have literally paths through the broader area, and they would just as willingly go back to those as well as they would embed themselves in the local community, cross-make their own warning cross-sects, that they wouldn't just sit there and die. They would obviously go back to other bases within the GCC and G regions, proves that they're not able to just be out that as for the affirmative. Their last card. This Wounds card is just very generic and says that the SOF is good generically because it has a small footprint. It also says they need to do village stability operation, but there's zero reason why the adding of just the plan text would automatically lead to village stability operations. ISIS impact arguments of their Kogelman evidence about ISIS propaganda, which was inevitable. ISIS is not a threat to the United States, letting it die out as best. 115, and most groups concerns are likely to prevent obligation of Sharia. It's made to documentation with lands are paramount. He told him, actually, fuck that card. Critiques. ISIS covers all high fuels their missions for your base. 15 as McDonald, terrorism expert in psychology at Georgetown, and coverage of the media of ISIS and Hollywood image of ISIS directing helped it receive attention from Western guys. ISIS coverage may be helping the group in rejecting the image of ISIS used to bring in new recruits out of an unstoppable force capable of sending up to the U.S. and Simmons going to be alarming stories about the power of ISIS reinforce the group's brand. This is proven by how the affirmative just speeds up warfare. They say in cross-ex, oh no, we're not all these types of aggressive forms of warfare. They're all of their impact cards are from Kagan, which proves how they're just neocons and neoliberal clothing, which proves that their security-driven counterterrorism creates the enabling conditions for for permanent militarism is not just the people being there, it's the discourses we use to support it. Jabri. And 6, the critical take is to reveal the condition and possibility in relation to how we got here with the aim is to open an agenda relations and concentrates on political agency. The war not here, but is a war against terrorism is a global war rather than being unified to crime and space farming. It's a political process, has a defining influence on elements constitutive of liberal direct kind of also to constitute some political life, the enabling conditions of global war. Also, somebody made a order constituted by trans practice and crucial element is a notion of practice of working practice, not just situated in a system of enablement and trans, but it's all constitutive structural constitutive practice, violence, concentrated, tortured, and institution, occupation, direct incarceration without due process, assassination, raw represented, and political discourse, security question, target against enemy politics, security, constitute one of the heart of politics, a major toward is constituted by antagonism with access, essential, the idea of the person, but the other constitutes a danger to, constitutes a danger to existence of the polity they consider herself in perpetual word as an impermanent mobilization, whatever you guys want, apply this towards competent character, first measures come, you can be seen as much for the enabling conditions, liberal governance, and with this later society, has organization would develop towards constitute, including real defending society, such as present to the immediacy of the radical party, removal of the enemy, the level of discourse and institutional practice are usually enabling. This is proven by how the affirmative just continues. Status quo discourse. Oh, if we tweak the military in this way, we'll definitely be able to kill ISIS. However, every single time we've said that, oh, if only we had stayed in Iraq, that is the same language that they are proving that says we can always reform the military strategy to make it better, but they ignore the fact that the military can never
If Middle East debates good or resolved and ISIS debates good or resolved.
The F isn't just fucking T-ISIS. You can, ISIS. You can obviously get debates about ISIS with regular ASPGFs that talk about basis. There's zero reason why we should obviously be prepared. You tweak the logistics tail. That's it.
New F's bad. T bases. Actually, sorry. New F's bad. Stability.
Which one is that?
That's advantage 1. SOF. Then T bases. Then K.
So we'll have T bases then the K.
Yes, sir.
You got a dot down.
Oh, I saw.
We're gonna take one more second, bro.
Yeah, let's get the
Oh. Yeah, we're okay.
I realize.
454.
We're on to sad before the K.
Okay.
Screen mode.
Same word.
No, I put the around D8 right before the K.
So condo, advantage 1, advantage 2, T, D8, K.
Yeah. Alright, is everybody ready?
You have secret as long as you're topical. They encourage innovation. If you weren't able to predict them, that's on you. The stability advantage. They drop the cyber impact that ICE is going to do that now. They drop to together impact argument about how ICE is going to cause political instability in Bangladesh, which is in Pakistan war, which is in Indochina war. All the arguments that they make on no solvency are just post-structural tropes, which I'm going to answer. And the criticism the plan spills over. The plan does spill over. Argue has also called evidence says that we can win the war in 72 hours because we destroy ISIS ideology by beating them on the ground. It's only possible. Which village stability operations with the affirmative would certainly integrate into the fact that we've done it in Afghanistan in 2002 proves that there's a doctrinal precedent for the United States to do this, which obviously the SOF would latch onto that rather than just doing nothing or going to Assad. They don't have any evidence to suggest that that's what the SOF would do. They would clearly want to stay in Iraq because that's the only way that they can do the operation, the objectives that the United States gave them. They can yell until they're red in the face and throw up their hands, but they still haven't read a single card that suggests the right of this question. The SOF advantage. The plane does spill over. One, it's a testing ground. Iraq is critical written by old doctrine. Second, that they're distracted from making a new strategy as long as they have a large footprint in Iraq, which is the actual evidence. Third is that the affirmative is an experimental ground, and they would start using the best practices after the affirmative more than 14. The nature of the episode adaptive West Ukraine and adaptive agile collaborative responsible planning to provide this innovative organization will actually the board actively work forever and otherwise considers the enable collaboration, but there's need to involve the push innovation further enable application of great capabilities the most effective manner. Use of alongside allied progress for serving as an organization doctrinal mechanism individual cooperative as website to these innovative purposes are able to constitute gender national nations collaboration gold lever will especially present so prior to 21st century so leaders adopt practices and 14 great solutions for achieving the goals of special operations due to special detail operationalize waiting to take instructions requires entrepreneurship really hard to complacency that that idea fails the results in innovation and so low results may the major purpose of performance occurred by the best practice was involved so leaders are quick response to use and encourage learning and making learning assets available. These lessons are not useful in part of the use of Thomas approach to building a goal so and Pepper gives kind of focus on working direct approach to teach something the goal as well as expected result. That's the only way to kind of rush you to UW warfare stages war in the Baltics in the short term. Another impact defense assumes at least relates to immunity to their conflict because they're NATO allies. That's a far more evidence. Only way to counter China because they would start focusing on building up partnership capacity instead of having a large footprint in the region, which results in A2D networks are good because of topicality. If you think that this affirmative is hiding from a debate, then you just don't cut cards. The plan is a wretched. The plan is a material obstruction in our military presence because our logistics support channel is the only it is the closest thing we have to a base in Iraq, which is a critical reasonability argument. They dropped a piece of evidence that we need to have country debates about the region of the Middle East because regional debates causes it to essentialize the region. I mean that we never focus on different cultures and ways that militarism are better with different countries. They say that bases are covert. That's multi-person security. 91 developed long definition for present visible when you use multi-personal material stereotypic about how the United States visibility is trickle into terms visible to those who research or target audience is the key count of visibility for present definition also includes covert activities and multi-personal material as long as the activity is visible to the target audience. Logistics of the military presence so handling aid. The United States has a potential overseas military presence not only despite representation have infrastructure and logistics assets. Each of presence rates reducing forces. We do that in terms of 15 forward presence maintaining the border deployed station forces overseas reductions have to be quantitative definitions fail because they either limit out affirmatives that are advocated in the literature, which means you only have OSB debates, or they mean the affirmative has attack on random presence to the reduction, which means that they would always lose on picks. You don't have to trust us, you just have to debate us and say that the shit wouldn't happen. Bases our presence now because of virtual. That was a card that I just read. The customary norms T basis has been roundly rejected by the community. We base our pre-round prep on that, which means that running a more limiting interpretation of the NDT punishes innovation, which creates a moral hazard. Base interpretation is bad. This isn't the Cold War. Forward presence has changed, so we have to have debate change with them. That's our TNI evidence. Their interpretation competition. Makes it so we don't debate detailed strategy about access, which A is the most pressing issue in the region. B specific is better because talking about specific strategies is better than the free riding advantage. Their topic is OSB. That's stale. That's stale. Got bad at GSU. It's just a generic hedge good bad, which we're doing since we're freshmen. The second, at least, to our regional focus, which already impacted being bad background, at least background one. They get the block into the gap starting point for debate, which means that is bad. The negative doesn't have an incentive to do anything. They crowd out every single Africa, which means that 9 countries in the topic want to get the South only. Can't implement the reasonability is key. Otherwise, there's a substance crowd out and there's bad faith because you've read affirmative like this before. Now the criticism, your intellectual dissent is worthless idealism. Policymakers will do a big program because of domestic political momentum, which means all their impacts get triggered in a worse way because we're going to radically respond to the instability there rather than doing VSOs, which are a better response. All their arguments are also essentialist and anti-imperialism of the fools because they don't assume the fact that moderate Sunnis and Kurds actually like the idea of VSOs. The alternative can lead to a paradigm shift because the framework states operate in running anarchy through West Philippine state system. The only way to solve their environment and structural war impacts of 14. If human beings morally better, their people wars of terrorism, world went to see from this instruction is false, the defensive property, finance, defensive world, definition, old political rights, defensive collective basis, structural issues, rather than human nature constantly the main factor underlying political conflict, system, morally relevant actors who could be part of workers' situation. Second one, let's say, using against security, private political leaders, spoken with a very scared war from morality, even if human beings come out morally enhanced, become based on face on scary scenarios, world enhancement, all the bottom motivate political leaders and make them new weapons, that will deter leaders from pursuing the people as long as church politics compels them to cooperate to the president, that is possible evidence in the future leaders will fail to cooperate and engage in wars. This looks like it can do happen even if leaders become less Western power seeking, march of power seeking. We reduce the possibility of war with globalization, which is proven by all statistics that it happens since the Cold War, which also solves our structural violence. It also shows the structural violence impacts arguments, framework arguments. The judge is a policy. The judge has to be a policymaker. One clash really comparative evidence about the plan two logic, thinking, ideology, and practice are an opportunity cost of one another, which means that they lead to bad opportunity cost models, which make it so we're more zero sum. Permutation both definitionally can't be severance. It proves that their model of competition is bad, and also shows that permitting the alternative can solve all their bad implication arguments because we can ideologically reprogram what we're doing it. Rejecting globalization is that worse because NMCs are the only ones that'll have enough power to sustain themselves after the alternative, which means that exploitation only goes up, which turns our environment impact more rapid. Turns our environment impact. You also you can't negotiate with terrorism or corporate intent. It's just a way from security is going to serve to enforce the international power qualities rather than lessen them. States have the greater freedom to intervene in the citizens. These states have been controlling these powerful states to shift away from security framework because national status quo states more houses and rhetoric with that. It's not pretty analysis. The great project is my critical theory becomes more than pressure people to behave and act with each other like a common security analysis rather than actually unable to engage with existing power structures. The Iran dissent. You dropped we turned the Iran impact, we only conceded oil defense, and then we straight turned the other part of the DA. So go for team.
407.
technical concession. They've dropped the reduced precludes, stopping something from going into the region. That's bad because it opens up speculation as after they can say that, and after it's topical, because we will introduce that into South Korea in the future, which opens up literally everything that the U.S. federal government might do, which makes it impossible for us to be negative. But I'm still going to go for the rest of our interpretation. Our interpretation is that the affirmative, in order to constitute a significant reduction, the affirmative must close a base. 1, our CPU evidence says that a significant reduction must require closing a base. They have no evidence that defines significant reduction around the term military presence. We should air towards it in terms of context alone. Second is that qualitative determinations are incoherent and impossible to determine. You can't tell the qualitative difference between a tank and 100 troops, but you can tell the difference between whether the affirmative removes a fucking base that's owned by the United States or not. This is a floor, not ceiling, which solves the majority of their offense, but locks in unidirectional ground for the negative. The question for the debate is not whether the affirmative meant to be a conversation about ISIS, or do we have the ISIS to every possible fucking asset in the region, but whether the plan itself and their interpretation generates the best practices for debate that are cultivated as the NDT goes on. I think I've done a really good job of establishing a clear link to our violation and why moving outside the definition of main operating bases and floor operating sets is uniquely bad. Judging T debate should be a question about limiting the affirmative's ability to claim unpredictable advantages in small acts that avoid coordinated strategy. You should shift the burden of proof, forcing the affirmative to prove that their interpretation is not just sufficiently debatable, but inculcates a good interpretation is key. 1, the NDT uniquely demands that the last 14 out of 20 final rounds were won by the affirmative, and even if everyone knows that Ellis was better than Miles, those limits are necessary to outweigh the cult of act flexibility and incentivize a shotgun negative strategy and late-breaking debates while decreasing the depth of argumentation within debate. The idea that they just need to cultivate new mechanisms to debate is fucking stupid, because you still get to have those deterrents and awesome assurances made on this topic. We should not be running from those things. Instead, the quality of affirmatives has been improving, and given the way the U.S. military presence is changing in places like Asia and the Gulf, but does not require you removing random shit from special operations forces in Iraq. It's necessary for predictable limits. The exclusivity of our interpretation is important. Remember, they've not read a counter-interpretation of the term military presence, only a definition of the term overseas presence, which massively exposed the topic and the fact that they're allowed to include the literature about the difference between the function of forces and the visibility of bases is vast and infinite. They say the plan is a material reduction. Their interpretation wrecks negative ground. This allows mechanism explosion because the affirmative gets unpredictable mechanism that deprives the negative of core generics, especially at the end of the year. Second, it opens up the entire map, allowing a litany of affirmatives to make tactical changes to our presence, makes them temporary, rotational, or whatever the fuck you've been doing all year, which wrecks stable negative ground. Even if they win, that there's literature about the affirmative, allowing the AF to withdraw any materials that contribute to the function of presence, makes everything topical, like removing sanctions, removing arms sales, removing surge capacity. A fucking missile becomes topical as long as we include infrastructure and a material reduction of what we have in the region. That means that it makes being neg literally impossible, because we can't cultivate a case neg to every single one of those. Even if we allow picks, the AF always has salty deficit, but the neg has to conduct a case neg against every single one, which makes it impossible for us. They say country debates are good. You can have those. We read in cases that we have bases in places like places like the UAE and Kuwait, which solves also your interpretation. T version of the affirmative can end the base in Kuwait and says that spills over to Iraq because all of them operate from the region. But the affirmative that makes tactical shifts in warfare make it impossible for the neg to have stable locked ground. They say ISIS debates are, they say visible presence, this GAO and this career card. Fuck, it's terrible. It says forward presence, which also includes missions, which is links to our interpretation in our case list above. They say that logistics are presence. Their O'Hanlon evidence says that firepower and infrastructure are all important. Those things are not defined in any piece of evidence. Also, allowing firepower means that the affirmative can remove the ammo from the affirmative. It makes it impossible for us to be negative. It also says that the U.S. has a lot of military presence abroad, and then 2 sentences later says that we have a lot of power and firepower and infrastructure. That is not an attempt to define military presence, which only our evidence says. That DoD evidence is about forward presence, which proves that they move predictability away from resolutional terms, because they don't fucking cop about any of the terms of the resolution. They've not had a counter-interpretation in the entire debate about what significant reduction means in the context of military presence, or what the term military presence means that you cannot vote on reasonability because they don't have a fucking counter-interpretation. They say that the reductions have to be qualitative, not quantitative. This is a terrible interpretation. You cannot make a distinction between the qualitative difference between a missile and a person, a qualitative difference between me and Donnie even, which is why you should default to the quantitative interpretation based around bases. They say that we just have to have the shift debate. Those debates may be inevitable. It's a question of whose ground they are. If it's on the aft ground, then the negative locks in bidirectionality, which makes it impossible for us to be negative, because they can claim that they change tactics of warfare to make our presence more effective without actually reducing the basis for that presence in the first place. That they turns all of their ground arguments. They say norms. This is fucking terrible. If we listen to community norms, we'd be stuck with shit-tastic aft. Their aft is also independently not predictable just because it's about Iraq. Our interpretation says that military presence has to be defined as basis in order to prevent limits explosion. Just because ISIS is important does not
not make you topical. The affirmative tweaks logistics and supports for spec ops that are not even the majority of what we have in Iraq. We have 4,500 ground training forces, but the affirmative doesn't care about those. We were obviously ready to debate ISIS, but the way that they justified mechanism against ISIS scrolls out of the debate. The affirmative is not just tied to the ISIS debate, and advantages don't check because plain action is where all of our links and internal link arguments are. We solved their ISIS and Iraq debate good arguments because all case arguments show logistics and infrastructure come from bases in the GCC. Proves that an affirmative can withdraw a base in the GCC and say that they change the tactics versus warfare of ISIS to some to result in a debate arguments. They say no Africa apps. Yes, you can. You can close Camp Lemonnier, which is the only main operating base that we have in the region. Reasonability is mediocrity. There's no definition of what is reasonable and allows you to judge that, which creates arbitrary distinctions between what acts you think are debatable and not. Second, all the combination of all reasonable interpretations is way too large and allows the affirmative to say, well, our act is debatable, which makes being negative impossible. It's about predictability. How do we prepare for the NDT? Not just by looking at community norms or what apps people have read throughout the year, but rather the way that the topic will evolve based on the definition of military presence. If they allow an expanded definition of military presence, they allow literally every affirmative that was impacted above, but not answered by any of their shit in the 1AR. Finally, is that competing interpretations are uniquely necessary in this context. There's no other way you can make a determination because they've not presented a definition of military presence.
4, 5, 4.
against an affirmative that reduces military presence in the most timely and important conflict in the world. View all their standards through a skeptical lens because one, ISIS is huge. You would be preparing to fail if you didn't have a reason why military presence is key to fight ISIS. Even if you did not have an Iraq negative war against ISIS takes up every news update, every Google alert. If you research military presence, that means it is a predictable limit for the negative to have. One, you have defense to our impacts. Two, have counterplans that solve ISIS. Third, have distance about where we need a large footprint to fight ISIS for allied assurance or adversarial deterrence. They were on the right track with the Iran dissent. Second, they have read in ISIS app at the last two tournaments. Vote against them if this was too hard to debate because they deserve to lose. All their predictable limits arguments are just bad faith because instead of taking the hard route of having a killer ISIS strategy to their own app, they decided to lean at the generic TK option. Don't reward them for that. Third is innovation. This topic has been determined by the affirmative's ability to research nuanced answers to the assurance and deterrence dissent. This has been a pretty easy topic to be negative given that the topic dissents are great unusually. That's why no one's really going for the politics dissent. We should be allowed to run a smaller app even if it makes the neg's life slightly harder. Otherwise, they would just get lazy going for the assurance dissent or the deterrence dissent over and over, which is the dissent debates we're having since GSU. Their base interpretation is terrible for the topic because it's antiquated. This is not the Cold War anymore. All of our military presence isn't located in these huge forward operating bases. The entire thesis of the affirmative is that we are reaching a fourth generation of conflict of unconventional warfare in which countries are escalating low-level provocations to start unintended miscalculation. If we don't have a response to that, that means that our resolution will not be debating the most relevant military presence topic that exists in the literature. They massively overload the topic by stifling app innovation. If their super tight base interpretation was the resolution, there would only be one Africa app in Djibouti. I have no idea how many Middle East apps there were because they said it crosses at their card when it said bases didn't really mean bases. South Korea app and Japan app, that's 4. All those apps are being read at GSU. This is the goddamn NDT we've been debating for almost a decade. Don't give the neg teams an entire year to prep about 4 case negs and allow those teams to have a chance at winning the NDT. You should have a higher threshold for research burden. They admit they only allow one Africa app. That's a regional debate that essentializes the minutia of topic regions. That's a conceded standard for the affirmative 2 impacts 1 fairness. The apps win debate on the specifics of their advocacy. The negative the upper hand when it comes to generics like assurance and deterrence this year, which means 6 new advantages that turn those dissents in unique ways is key to increasing app win count. Second is education. If you go the entire year without debating the differences between the Shias and Sunnis, Kurds, and PMUs, Uganda and Ethiopia, that is not a good vision for the topic or policy analysts because it makes all of our analysis and debates shallow. They're on the top, no technical concession on the reduction debate. 1, it's in the region now. We've reduced the president. It doesn't go back. You can vote negative on a different debate. Second, presence is virtual, which means that we meet since the plan is all part of our current presence. Reduce modifies presence, so they have to win the topicality-based argument before this matters. Now, the significant reduction of military presence debate, the entire premise of the 2NR is that there is no counter-information. There is. We have a vision of the topic that solves limits and no ground. Our counter-information is that military presence includes logistics, which includes covert operations and troops, which solves the weapons of the weak app, which is their biggest impact. Remember, we do not link to their case list of shitty affirmatives. We removed around 5,000 troops from the most pressing conflict zone in the world. That is much different than sanctions or missiles or tech transfers. We only justify apps that remove thousands of troops from a topical region. Now, affirmative flexibility does not shotgun negative strategy that exists because you don't think ahead. That sucked for you. Also, bad faith because it relies on the idea that negative would make debate small, which they never will because they have a time advantage to spread the affirmative out, which means we need the ability to innovate and have fairness. Also, it's good for education because talking about more things is better than the same 5 off we've been having since GSU. The individual country apps they talk about don't meet their significant arguments, so they exclude those. The Oman-based app isn't big enough to outweigh it, they said, because it's not a central controversy of U.S. presidency. Qualitative interpretation of the resolution is essential to evaluating the military presence topic because there is no way to quantitatively measure troops versus tanks versus ships, which means they get rid of Navy affirmatives, they get rid of carrier affirmatives, they get rid of Air Force affirmatives because not all of them are resulting in forward operating bases. People have read Iraq apps all year, which is how we based our preparation racing back to limits at the end of the year, punishes months of creative affirmative writing, which incentivize the same still stupid debates. Remember, we meet their basis interpretation. Our evidence from 2016 says that there are currently 4 bases in Iraq that are critical to fighting ISIS. They're re-highlighting this card just says that we have sorties in those bases. Yes, we remove those sorties. That's what the support tail is. Our news evidence says that we take out the military presence that allows for the quick reaction forces that could go into the conflict zone to take out our troops when they get in trouble. Instead, we rely on mobility as our primary force protection tactic, which means that those sorties are not in Iraq anymore. We are getting rid of those bases, and you should just reject your conflagration that bases need to have a particular SOFA because it's way too over-limiting for the topic. They say that there was a topical version of the affirmative, but that is not true. Because the Kuwait and the SPGFs don't solve our affirmative 1. All of our affirmatives about why having lots of military presence in Iraq is bad, and why having a small footprint is critical. Second is that the ISIS app that existed on this year, I've talked about why if we reduce presence from the Arab states to the Persian Gulf, that results in solving the free riding problem, which is one advantage that the army have been neg to that is pretty shitty and easily counterplan outable. They say, yeah, you didn't solve the ISIS debates. Go to reasonability. Topicality should be about ensuring a debatable resolution instead of racing to the most precise or limiting interpretation. Even if you think that their interpretation is better than ours, you should feel comfortable voting affirmative. You determine our interpretation is good enough, or that they had a decent shot at winning this debate without going for topicality. One, nobody is perfect. There are always going to be problems with any interpretation of the resolution. That's why we're here to debate it out. Second, is debate is supposed to be difficult. That's why you have to put months of research to win tournaments. The goal should be to prioritize new and interesting innovations, not shut them down. Third is that asymmetries are inevitable. The affirmative speaks first and last, gets infinite prep, while the negative is conditionality and the negative block, which means that striving for an equitable argument and a balance is fool's gold. Fourth is community norms. This topic has been unique because of the lack of people going for topicality throughout the year. This has allowed teams like MSU to get away with the Opcon app, which we would all have to have a neg to going into the NDT. Given that our affirmative research in it was based on what we thought was allowable, any reason why this app should not be topical is the reason why they should have gone for T early in the year, not why we should lose since they have not kept up with the innovation curve.
Great. The bell ring at the end. Okay. Good.
Cards.
Yeah, just look them out.
You got it.
Yeah.
If you send up
The decision is a 3-0 for the neg from Emory.
I can start. I thought the limits DA was more significant than the impact of nuanced mechanism innovation. At the top, I'll just say I thought no to answering the question of did the 1AR, I think, have a direct response to TVA that accessed an ISIS discussion even if Kuwait is insufficient, and did the 1AR respond to the increase, reduce, violation that was in the 2NC? I don't think either of those. I think that, I mean, they're all wrapped up in the military presence debate, so like if you win that, it's like whatever, but those give me some like air neg of other words that modify what I should think about military presence. And that's the same thing if like the top is like counterinterps of some of these words that assume bases have to be reduced like significant and the reduce argument, and some pushback to the limits DA that may not be to the plan, but things like missions, supplies, mobility, that all come from overseas presence that the 2AC GAO def and the 1AR O'Hanlon card speak to. It'll at least give me some air neg on the likelihood of a limits DA to, if not the plan, to the counter, to the inclusive we meet argument. Qualitative, quantitative, I don't know, but I think there is a clear baseline if I decide yes base or no. The limits internal link, I think, is like fairly big, like I described above, a couple of things that would happen in a world of mech prolif that you would think is innovative and beneficial and would undermine the prep that goes into the NDT. And then the other thing that there's just not an on-point response to, and again, you think mech innovation is good in like a vague sense, but it's that innovation bidirectional, yes, no. Is your better research strategies to assurance debatable? I don't know, because they say it's bidirectional and that makes it difficult to get links to these things. You're just like, we should constantly pursue more strategic options against those DAs from GSU to now. So it's kind of hard to resolve. So there's just an on-point utilization of that, at least verbiage of the negative, and why it is not, or why the pursuit of innovation is good, even if supposedly bidirectional, or all of the acts that have been residual presence, blah, 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 throughout the year. And is the only reason why discussing Iraq is good is because it's an important foundation of ISIS. Well, I think the litany of other bases, as well as maybe the Kuwait option, are ways that we can have advantages that discuss ISIS. What the external reason why Iraq is good, aside from that, just because it's so important to that discussion, I don't know. That was a little bit difficult to decide. So maybe bases are outdated. Maybe we should discuss countries instead of the region more broadly and have broader innovation. I just thought the limits DA was larger, and this was a weakness on both sides. Like, there's not a real impact terminally comparison between limits and innovation or Africa, and so it's kind of hard. So, like, I think they've got a decent internal link from maybe bases being outdated. These countries, mech innovation discussions are good, and potentially we only have Camp Lemonnier, South Korea, Japan, and maybe 3 or 4, let's say, bases that are in the Gulf. I just think I'm more comfortable with that than that, plus all of these small mechanisms or missions affirmatives that could be added to that. Is the app that? I don't know. It's just but there needed to be pushback to the DAs that are applied to the overseas presence phrase. And that was, a weakness at the impact level when I thought the 2AC's got a credible net benefit. You've got a limits DA, but potentially some education offense is solved by presence being able to access ISIS. Are there other things? I don't know, that could have been externally extrapolated aside from ISIS. That's what I got, I think.
Yeah, so most of my stuff is similar. I think like a limits DA based off the mechanism is crucial. So I think that one part that hurt you kind of ethos-wise is being like, it's ISIS, 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 and they already have a pushback that's like, it's not just about ISIS, it's about the mechanism, and they've developed that pushback since even, I think, like the 1NC in Cross-X. And you don't really push back against that or develop a new line of reasoning as to why you need to use your mechanism to discuss it more in depth. That only really comes in the 2AR, where you're like, we've had such stale debates and stuff like that. The 1AR makes a picks argument, but that doesn't pick back up in the 2AR, and I think that could be a spot where you're like, picks mean if we do bases, then we couldn't do the app, because you just read your counterplan that you basically wanted to read anyway, that advantage counterplan, and you read that every time, and then you say, keep our base for symbolic presence to our allies, every time. And that means we don't get these debates and we don't get innovation, because you have to read the GSU app, because otherwise if you don't read the advantages only about the base itself, then you lose to the pick. And that means no innovation. picks bad, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's the way to go about it. In terms of the arguments themselves, structurally, I think you made a mistake in the 1AR of reading too many cards and not doing enough like impact analysis. So I even thought of this during the 1AR. If you look at what's flowed in the 1AR, it is not as much impact comparison in response to other stuff, and it has a lot of reading cards. And there isn't a crucial moment in my decision or during the 2AR where it's like, look at this 1AR card. It says this crushes this part of the debate, blah, blah, blah. It's like some interesting FYIs on what military presence is, but none of it ultimately is going to like decide the debate, and didn't decide the debate. So I think that don't read any of those cards. I don't think the 1AR cards really help you in terms of your interpretation. I also think the counter-interpretation, you should just come up with a better one beforehand. I don't think that you have a limiting counter-interpretation. The 2AR, like, we are covert plus logistics, I don't really think is what your card says as your 2AC counter-interpretation. Like the GAO evidence, it says like it could be infrastructure required to conduct the full range of military operations. You know, don't you think full range of operations? And I think you could quote some of their interpretation stuff. You say like they don't have a counter-interpretation, but you should say their counter-interpretation relies on this, and this is functionally unlimiting because of blah blah blah. And the 1AR Greer evidence is the same. It says it includes covert activities using military personnel as long as the activity is visible to the target audience. So as long as you remove a missile and people see the missile, then that would be topical or something like that. But I think doing that evidentiary analysis would provide the link to limits a little bit more.
Yeah, so my general problem with this debate is that neither side really did impact calculus. Like, how do I weigh essentialist, outdated education about military presence versus ground? Like, I have no fucking idea how to do that. So it's difficult when neither side tells me what the goal of debate ought to be and how to best pursue them, but the AF does make an argument in the 2AR that fairness outweighs because new advantages are key to meet deterrence. And I do kind of begin the topicality debate with the presumption that more engagement for both sides is better, which I thought the neg wanted to better internal link to by limits and ground. Even if the AF counter-interpret is good and educational, the fact that you have no ebb to define, with an intent to define military presence, means that none of it's predictable and hence reasonable for the negative to be expected to prepare for. I'm kind of like persuaded, similar to what Ian was saying, like this isn't the ISIS topic, it's the military presence topic, which is what the negatives prep is based off of. Your O'Hanlon evidence is the only one that says military presence, but it also includes like firepower, which probably gives them a link to limits if I want to include that, and it doesn't have an intent to define. In terms of AF ground, I just thought the magnitude of the neg link to ground and limits outweighed your link to AF ground. Like Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, Japan, South Korea, Djibouti, like that kind of sounds like a sweet topic. And I think there's room for advantage innovation, which is actually ironically enough what you said in the 2AR you needed versus deterrence. And even if there's limited mech innovation, the force ceiling / T version of the AF argument means that the AF can still access a lot of your innovation, i.e. you could close the bases in Asia and say that you end the ASB strategy as a result, even if ASB alone would not be topical, or close the Djibouti base and say that strategy shifts in Africa are a result, and you can access other discussions of military presence that way, and that gives you an internally adapted innovation. Regional debates centralized, it's just hard to say what the impact of this is if they win, that you undermine negative engagement. Like, it just needs to do impact calculus in the 2AR on, like, that was where I thought maybe you could have won the debate. If, like, you explain actually why it's bad to have the deterrence debate the whole year. Because, like, you were, like, kind of having, like, a gut check on that, but I thought the gut check went the other way, like, a year of deterrence debates. Sweet! And so the impact of staleness, you gotta go, like, a little bit beyond, like, come on, with arguments about the purpose of debate and the importance of debating the topic in a timely, realistic manner for producing, you know, effective advocates for change, or whatever you think outweighs neg ground. Yeah, reasonability, I just thought they were a little bit ahead on in terms of, because you didn't have a counter that said military presence, and